I don't remember the first time I heard the words Route 66. I remember the feeling, a little tingle in the gut, the kind you get just before the roller coaster tips over. The road had a way of doing that to you, even in a thought, even in a song on the radio, when you were setting out with a suitcase that didn't latch right and too much hair cream on your comb. Close your eyes, and you can still hear the starter catch, feel the hood shiver, and see that white line unspool like a ribbon you've been waiting your whole life to pull. They called it the Mother Road, and for good reason. She was long, 2,448 miles of it, by the old counts, and she threaded 8 honest-to-goodness American states, from the breezes off Lake Michigan to the salt in the air out near the Pacific. But to me, she was closer and smaller and kinder than all that. She was the way my father's hand hovered over the dash while he checked the choke. She was the way my mother wrapped sandwiches in wax paper, neat squares, 2 in a stack, always with a pickle spear in its own little nest of foil, so the bread wouldn't get wet. She was the way a summer morning smelled when the garage door creaked up. A little gas, a little dust, and a world getting ready to be yours. You'll read the histories if you want the bones, the government charts and the maps and the exact day they numbered it all. But what sticks with me is the life we poured onto that blacktop. Sure, it got its badge in '26, and folks will remind you they finally took the official signs down in '85, but the road never left us. She just changed her name and kept on breathing in our stories, our dashboard sing-alongs, our neon-lit dinners where the coffee was always hot and the waitress called you hon like she meant it. I was a kid of the late '50s, more or less, born in time to catch the chrome glinting like sunlight on water and the smell of brand-new vinyl seats in cars that were somehow both ships and living rooms. Back then, Route 66 didn't just run through towns, it threaded through lives. In Illinois, heading south out of Chicago, you'd see that first hint of adventure in the letters stenciled on a roadside shield or painted right on the pavement by folks who wanted to keep the legend visible even when the official markers had a habit of wandering off into people's collections. A little farther, and the road felt like it was shaking off its city shoes and walking barefoot. I loved the way the Midwest opened itself, the way an old friend opens his screen door, all at once, and with a creak that makes you smile. Cornfields packed tight enough to look like a quilt, barns standing at attention like red toy blocks, and those sly little Burma shave signs, 5 at a time, spaced just so, the joke unfolding in short pants as you rolled by. If you know, you know, one line, then another, then a chuckle as the punchline landed right before the brand name, as polite and proud as a chorus line bowing after the show. We'd read them out loud, taking turns, and when my sister got the rhyme wrong, my father would tap the steering wheel in mock outrage. The road taught you timing, and Burma Shave taught you how to be a good audience. St. Louis meant a great river and a bridge that kinked a little in the middle like a bent elbow. Chain of rocks, they called it. It had a character all its own, and crossing there felt like a ceremony. The Mississippi below, the car gently humming, the air taking on that river-cooled weight that made the world seem slower and kinder. Folks today stroll it on foot and bicycle, but to us it was a gateway with an odd, lovable quirk, one of those only on 66 moments that made you grin the next 50 miles. Missouri curled you toward the Ozarks, where the road learned to dance a little. Up, down, around, and always another billboard promising something you didn't know you needed. A slice of pie, a cave tour, a souvenir spoon with your state flower. My mother saved those spoons in a little felt-lined box, each one a small, shining remember when. We did a cave now and then, drawn in by the great Merrimack Caverns ads that once sprouted on old barns like tall grass. Just the name was a spell, Merrimack, and the promise of cool air underground on a scalding day was a blessing disguised as commerce. We'd pile out, stretch our backs, and let a guide with a flashlight make stalactites into fairy castles with a well-placed beam. Kansas was quick, like clearing your throat between verses, but it counted. 13 miles of grin, a reminder that small doesn't mean forgettable. You blinked at Galena and Baxter Springs, and suddenly Oklahoma was under your wheels, spreading itself wide and generous, with skies that looked like the lids had been unscrewed. Tulsa had a way of making you feel dressed up, even if your shirt was stuck to your back. We didn't know names like Cyrus Avery then. We just knew the road felt right there, like somebody who cared about roads had stood where we stood and pointed, saying, "This way." Later, I learned Avery's name, the father of Route 66, they call him, and smiled at the thought that every good road has a father and a heartbeat. Oklahoma gave us one of my all-time favorites, proof that roadside attractions didn't need to be slick to be perfect. The blue whale out in Catoosa, a great big storybook grin rising from a little pond, bright as a lunchbox and twice as dear. You could smell wet wood and sunscreen and something like summer camp. The locals told us it had started as a gift from a husband to his wife, and even as a kid, I loved the idea that a man could love so big he'd build a whale. We picnicked on the grass, dragged our bare feet in the shallows, and felt the day put its arm around us. Texas meant the panhandle flatness and a sky so wide you felt lighter just looking at it. In Shamrock stood a little miracle of green tile and neon called the U-Drop Inn. Art Deco angles and a tower that made you straighten your shoulders as you walked in, like you were entering a ballroom rather than a cafe. The burgers were the kind you taste again in memory the rest of your life. And at night, the building glowed like the cover of a jukebox single. Out past Amarillo, newer years gave us those half-buried Cadillacs with their tails up like steel prairie dogs. But in my boyhood, the fields felt endless and clean, a place where the car's shadow kept you company like a long-legged friend. New Mexico turned the palate up. Suddenly the light was sideways and golden, and the names tasted different. Tucumcari, Santa Rosa, Albuquerque, each beat a little drum under your ribs. Tucumcari kept a promise in neon and motel rows that still make me greedy for vacancy signs and fanciful names. Blue Swallow, Road Runner, 1,000 iterations of inn that all felt like home for tonight. The town had a habit of bragging with a wink, "Tucumcari tonight," and the signs made good on it, tugging you off the highway with assurances of 100% refrigerated air, like cool sleep was a virtue the town held dear. That glow, pink, turquoise, electric white, still hums in my mind when I think of summer. I'll tell you something small, because small things are how time proves it loved you. At the Blue Swallow once, I watched a man with a chamois cloth polish the curve of a gas pump glass like it was a wedding ring. He wasn't putting on a show. He was talking to the owner about a leaky faucet in 3B and polishing absent-mindedly. That's Route 66. Even the way a man keeps his gas pump clean matters, because it means the next traveler is going to feel cared for. Arizona always felt like the road was taking its hat off for something noble. The mesas stood stony-faced, and the air smelled of sun-warmed creosote and a little dust. Winslow had a corner before the song did, and Seligman had the kind of cheer that didn't need to be loud. My favorite gag in Seligman was the way the folks at a certain drive-in would hand you your cone like it was a secret trophy, and the joke was always a kind one. I remember sleeping in a teepee-shaped room once, Wigwam Motel, they called it in Holbrook, and feeling like a kid camping, only with hot water and thick towels. The cars parked out front looked like a traveling museum exhibit, noses angled just so, chrome bright enough to catch your eye when you peeked out the curtains. If you've ever driven the old alignments that brush past petrified forest or cut near the meteor crater, you know how the landscape can steal your words without making you sad for them. It was a kind of happiness that didn't require chatter. We'd fall quiet in the car, as if the red rocks were singing under our own conversation and we didn't want to drown them out. California finally came on like a perfume you catch across a room. First a ghost of citrus, then a shimmer of heat, then mountains that turned blue around the edges as the distance worked its magic. Crest a hill, and the sky seemed to tilt toward you like a host leaning in to say, "Been expecting you." We'd drift through Barstow and San Bernardino, and the last miles felt like pulling on a well-loved sweater. And then comes that Pacific, doing its glittering trick on every eyeball it meets. Some folks will tell you the terminus was tweaked this way or that over the years, Los Angeles in the early days, Santa Monica later, and I believe them. What I remember is the sense of completion when the smell of salt gave way to the steady hush of the surf. That's a finish line you don't walk across. You exhale across it. Music traveled with us, as necessary as tires. There was a song about kicking up your heels from Chicago to L.A. Bobby Troup wrote it, and to my ear, Nat King Cole sang it like he'd put a steering wheel in his throat. You couldn't hear that tune without seeing tail fins and sunburned forearms and the glint of soda bottles in a wire rack. On certain nights, if the sky was late pink and the asphalt held on to the day's heat, you could all but hear the trumpet lick before you turned the knob. That song was a benediction for gear shifters, and if you knew the words, you felt like a member of a club that welcomed everybody. Television even had its say. There was a show in the early 60s about two fellas and a Corvette, and though they didn't stay married to our highway in every episode, the idea stuck. You, a friend, a fast car, and a country willing to let you change somewhere between breakfast and dinner. That spirit matched the stretch of road I loved, the promise that stories could begin at any mile marker and end a town later with a milkshake and a sunset. What did the days actually feel like? They felt like this. Your father's arm tan stopping sharp at the shirt sleeve, your mother's sunglasses catching the bug-spattered light and turning it into little green flares. The way maps cracked at the folds if you opened them too often, and the triumphant sigh when the service station attendant handed you a crisp new one on the house. Dad shaking his head in wonder at gas for 30-some cents, then cheerfully tipping another dime because the windshield got a better wash than the last place. A styrofoam cooler squeaking under the picnic table bench, a paper cone of salted peanuts that tasted better for being eaten out of a pool of shade on the concrete. It's funny what sticks. I can tell you the shape of the pie case at a dozen diners, glass triangles spinning slowly, trays of meringue topped like mountains on a model train set. I can tell you that the coffee at 3 p.m. on a hot day was always just a little too strong, which made it perfect. I can tell you that motel ice machines, no matter the town, smelled faintly of fresh laundry and cold metal, a smell that says, you are traveling and you are doing it right. Some things were the same across the miles, and that sameness was its own comfort. The neon promised vacancy and delivered it. The towels were in a pyramid on the back of the toilet tank. The beds had bedspreads with patterns that looked like someone taught a cactus to knit. And then there were the differences you waited for. The shape of the mountains on the horizon, the color the dust turned your shoelaces, the way locals said hello and meant it from the center of their chest. I remember watching the evening arrive in Tucumcari, softly at first, then with a click as the signs woke up one by one. The glow made everything look like it was made of warm glass. And late enough for the highway to have quieted, you'd hear the ping, ping, ping of a cooling car engine and know you were among friends, travelers, dreamers, people who had decided that a day could be a story and that a road could be a character. And the landmarks, I carry them around like lucky pennies. The U-drop ends green and cream tile and that zippy tower throwing a shape against the sky that made you feel like the future had a sense of style. The wigwam teepees where you could sleep under a cone of concrete and pretend the stars were only inches away. That bubbly blue whale with the kind eyes, a kind of roadside wish made real. In St. Louis, the eccentric kink of the old bridge where a river became a ceremony. You don't need to know the dates or the architects or the funding bills to feel what they do to your pulse. But when you do know them, it's like reading the liner notes on an album you love. You appreciate the band even more. Here's a little trick the years taught me. When you're chasing the feeling, you don't have to chase the exact pavement. Folks with clipboards will explain how the big interstates took over and how long before the last stretch was bypassed, and when an association or two decided it was time to preserve what they could preserve. Me, I think of it like this. The best 85% of the feeling is always drivable, any year you go back. You can put your tires on old alignments, nose into towns where the neon still hums, and order a slice of pie that tastes like your first road trip. The names may shuffle, the shortcuts may change, but the heartbeat is curiously modern. Point the hood west, and America still opens up for you like a tulip. I find myself these days sitting at kitchen tables with grandkids who want to know what it was like back when. I tell them it wasn't back when. It's now, if you want it. The road is there the moment you decide a day can be bigger than your to-do list. The road is there when you look at a map, paper, if you please, and your index finger draws a gentle S across places whose names already sound like memory. The road is there when you eat breakfast in one town and lunch in another and carry both around like souvenirs inside you. They never closed Route 66 so much as they quietly retired her jersey. In the late 1950s, America stitched together a brand new web of four-lane interstates, safer, faster, built for trucks and families racing the clock. Mile by mile, I-55, I-44, I-40, I-15, and I-10 shouldered the heavy traffic that our two-lane friend had carried with such grace. On paper, the officials decommissioned Route 66 in 1985 and took down the shields. On the ground, the road simply changed her name and kept telling stories. Today, you can still drive most of her old alignments, business loops, main streets with neon that hums at dusk, and discover that what mattered never left. The pie cases, the kind smiles, the feeling that a day can become a legend if you let the wheels sing. If you want specifics, because sometimes specifics are the proof that your heart keeps accurate books, here are a few to tuck in your pocket. The road got its official blessing in 1926 and found ways to keep us company after the official signs came down in '85. It ran from Chicago toward Los Angeles and, in the end, kissed the Pacific near Santa Monica. It made heroes out of ordinary places and gave nicknames to corners of the country that might otherwise have stayed shy. It put St. Louis in your path and the Mississippi under your wheels. It gave you diner counters where the stools squeaked as you swiveled, and motels where the ice was free if you brought a bucket. It taught you that long distances are kind to families and that laughter echoes better in the back seat than anywhere else in the world. It also gifted us a common language. Instead of saying, "I'm tired," you learned to say, "Let's make tukum kari tonight." Instead of saying, "I'm restless," you said, "Let's see how far we get before the neon." And in place of, "I don't know what I want," you said, "Let's order it how they make it here," and discovered chili you never knew you liked, or pie that rewrote your notion of lemon meringue. If you were lucky, you ran across a motel owner who pressed a real key into your palm, the kind with a room number engraved into a little diamond of plastic, and a click in the lock sounded like applause. Did we drive with the windows down? Of course we did. That's how you learned that the sun in Texas has a different weight than the sun in Illinois, and that the Arizona dusk comes on with a sweeter smell. That's how you got the radio just right. A little static, a lot of saxophone, and a DJ who sounded like your cousin pretended to be famous. That's how we first heard the car club boys talk about a tune called Route 66, and for a few miles, everyone in America seemed to hum the same bass line. And later, when a TV show put two good-looking fellas in a Corvette and pointed them more or less our way, you felt seen. It wasn't the details, it was the invitation. Go, see, be the bigger version of yourself that the road coaxes out of you. If I could hand you a single moment from those years, I'd wrap up one of the evenings when we rolled into a town right at the blue hour. The heat was slipping off the pavement.